The 2018 Formula One season was one to forget in the end for Valtteri Bottas. He started the year well, but had a lot of bad luck that cost him potentially some victories at the start of the season. And then as the year went on and Mercedes' focus was all around Lewis Hamilton's championship challenge, Bottas faded into the background really, sometimes through the will of the team and other times just through effectively not turning up. We're here now to have a look at what went wrong for Bottas by the end of the year and what he can do to fix it for 2019. And I've got Autosport's Grand Prix editor Ed Straw and F1 Racing magazine editor Ben Anderson here to discuss it. Ben, I think we all have rated Bottas over the years. Some of us have covered him in the junior categories and his early years at Williams and the surprise promotion to Mercedes, where he became a race winner in the first season in 2017. But 2018 just seemed to go from bad to worse as the year developed. Do Bottas and Mercedes now have a big job on their hands to kind of rebuild the man that they once had?
Yeah, I think they do. It's really tough position for Bottas to be in. His first year Mercedes, like you say, he won some races, but there were some problems. He didn't really evolve through the year with the car. He struggled more relative to Hamilton as the Mercedes got better. But speaking to me at the end of that season, he identified those problems. He felt like he just needed a winter of full preparation. Remember, he joined Mercedes quite late after the whole Farrago of Nico Rosberg's unexpected retirement. So he felt he was starting his Mercedes career on the back foot. 2018, he felt, well, I'll get a proper run at that. I'll get myself comfortable in the car, comfortable in the team. There'll be no excuses. I've got the things to learn from 17 to take on board. But really, it's been a very similar story, a strong start. He didn't get the wins that his performances deserved in the early part of the year. But second half of the season, he's faded away again. And we haven't really seen the progress that we expected. He's still struggling with tyre management. He can't really get near Lewis. It seems, maybe it's a bit early to say, but it seems like he's kind of reaching his ceiling. And that's mentally very challenging for him. And at the same time, we saw Mercedes build around Lewis, use Bottas as an aid to Hamilton's title fight. That's another psychological blow for Bottas. And we hear comments from Toto Wolff saying, oh, we've got two alpha drivers. And that just feels like psychological management, really. They had two alpha drivers before with Rosberg and Hamilton, and that caused disaster internally. The reason things are better now is that at the moment, that isn't the dynamic.
Ed, what do you make of how Bottas has got on at Mercedes? I think you followed his development, particularly at Williams, quite closely. And did you feel at that point that he was ready to step up and have a go in a leading team? And how has his performances since then compared to maybe what you were expecting when he first got the promotion?
He was certainly ready to step up. He'd excelled at Williams for several years. It's difficult. When you're up against someone like Lewis Hamilton, the bar it's just sky high. So there's no disgrace in being behind Lewis Hamilton, but the fundamental problem is how close he is, particularly on race days, all the management issues and things that Ben was talking about. So I've been a little bit disappointed that he hasn't been. He should be able to be that dependable, guy banging in the second places ahead of the Ferraris. Certainly should have outscored Kimi Raikkonen this year. You can argue Bottas had a bit of bad luck with lost races, but Raikkonen had some bad luck as well. So, he just did not finish high up enough in the championship, Bottas, ultimately. So I have been a little bit disappointed by what he's done, and I think the big problem is he's a very good driver in a team with an all-time great. It's very, very hard to achieve in that scenario. And I wrote a column recently arguing that what he really needs to do is accept, do you know what, he's not going to beat Hamilton over the season. You might think that that's the end for a racing driver as soon as they think that. But I think if he slightly recalibrates from beating Hamilton to, right, keep closing the gap. The qualifying average gap was not big. If he can just keep closing up, then he'll start doing the job Mercedes need him to do. And then it becomes a much simpler equation for them to whether or not they keep him in the future.
It's a very difficult recalibration for Bottas to do, though, isn't it? Because
massively. It takes tremendous mental strength.
He's grown up through the junior ranks, and you touched on that in the intro, Glenn. As a driver with potential to be a world champion, he certainly believes that he can do that. He's come to Mercedes to achieve that ambition. It's one of, if not the best team on the grid. Obviously, the results say undoubtedly it is. So he would go into that thinking, right, this is my chance. I can beat anyone. I believe in myself. And he's come up against possibly one of the greatest drivers ever in Formula One and hasn't found in 2 seasons a way to beat him consistently. So to try and reconcile that with your ambition to be a world champion is almost impossible. And I accept what Ed's saying about, in order to get the most out of himself, he perhaps needs to recalibrate and just focus on closing the gap. But of course, that requires a complete refocus of his own ambitions, which is to beat Hamilton. That's what he's there to do personally. And if he can't do that, perhaps that is the only way that he can go. But it won't be easy for him, because it's essentially parking your lifetime's ambition to redo the way you go racing and try and say, right, well, I need to kind of establish some kind of long-term plan to get where I want to be. Not easy. That's
a big ask in a matter of, months before we're back on the pre-season F1 trail, which is a scary thought at this point as we record this, because it feels like the 2018 season has only just finished. But even looking beyond 2019, Ed, is Bottas kind of doomed whatever happens next year? Because Mercedes have Esteban Ocon on the sidelines next year, and he could form quite a looming shadow almost over Bottas, particularly if he's in the back of the Mercedes garage and hanging around at Grand Prix in team kit. People are constantly going to be asking the question, and there was a real feeling towards the end of this year when we realised Ocon wasn't going to be on the grid in 2019. It's almost becoming assumed fact now that, he'll be in that car in 2020. Does that mean that Bottas is completely fighting a losing battle now?
No, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. Yeah, he's in a corner. He really, really needs to find that next level from his performance to have a chance of hanging on to it. But he's the man in possession, which means he can at least do something. Now, Ocon is in an interesting position. You're never better than when you're out of the team. There's a saying about that in various sports, and that's the case. So Ocon's reputation, he can't do anything to diminish it, and he'll just be this megastar of the future who's on the sidelines.
And he'll be in people's ears as well, won't
course,
he?
Yeah.
using that position to go, hi Valtteri, I'm in the background.
Get yourself seen on TV.
Watch out.
So it's an easy job for Esteban. He's just got to put up with being on the sidelines for a year. But Bottas has got the car. So when push comes to shove, this is elite sport. So you just got to say, the team can say it to Valtteri. He can say it to himself. It's like, right, this is elite sport. Performance is everything. If he performs, it's not absolutely 100% guaranteed he stays in, because there could be a kind of continuation of the team leadership scenario they want to look at, because Hamilton's obviously only contracted for a few more years. So they might get to a point where they think, well, Valtteri's doing a great job as a number 2, but he's not going to be a team leader in the future once Lewis possibly leaves or retires or anything. That might change the equation. But if Bottas can at least deliver what he needs to, be that number 2 driver both on and off track that they want him to be, then it'll be much, much harder to take him out, because then you're taking out a known quantity and replacing it with an unknown quantity. But again, that's a really difficult challenge for Bottas to do. So he's got a chance, but he needs to really, particularly in the first half dozen races of the season, really get settled, pick off a win, and just deliver.
I'd say there's more to it than that. I think he's really got nowhere to hide. He needs to string the whole season together this time for Mercedes. If you look at the last two...
Yeah, but if he doesn't start well, he's doomed.
Absolutely.
Whatever happens. The point is, you can't do 2/3 of a good season. It's got to be, I reckon, the first half dozen races, the die will be cast. Yeah, you've got to continue it, because they won't sign him there and then.
Yeah, sure. In 17, there was the constant speculation about Bottas's contract. Like, will he get an extension? He looks like he's doing a good job because he made a strong start. And he was saying, it'd be good if my future was solved. And eventually they did, and he tailed off in the second half of the season. And then this year he had another strong start, contract renewal just before the Hungarian Grand Prix, and then the tail off in the second half of the season. So it's difficult to manage that. Bottas, we know he can start strong. So if he starts strong again next season, that isn't really an indication that he's learned the lessons he needs to. He's got to keep that going all the way through the year and evolve with the car in the way that Lewis does, even if he can't quite match him.
That's absolutely true. But if he doesn't start strongly, he's out straight away. Basically, he's not going to be replaced that instant. But if he doesn't start well, the decision will be made, basically. Even if it's not 100%, we'll take Ocon. It's like, right, we've got to move on from Valtteri Bottas.
He's had his chances, effectively.
That's the argument. That's the argument I'll take. And it's, it might sound harsh on him, but this is the absolute top level. I really do rate Valtteri Bottas. There's a real driver in there. He needs to find a bit more edge. That's probably one of the things he needs to do. He needs to maybe even...
in battle as well, particularly.
Edge in battle, edge off track. Lewis Hamilton's described them as the best teammates in F1 history, which is obviously a slightly strange claim. But the last thing you want is your teammate saying, "Oh yeah, he's the best teammate I could have," because that means, "Oh, you quite like me and I'm not as good as you," doesn't it? That's the problem. So he needs to be not necessarily the thorn in Hamilton's side that Rosberg was, because that creates its own problems. But at least give him a little prod every now and again.
This comes back to the whole psychological problem, though, doesn't it? Because to be that kind of driver, he has to become more ruthless. But that means he's going down the path of being less the number 2 that Mercedes probably need him to be. to be the number 2, he's got to accept that he's not Lewis Hamilton's equal and isn't going to beat him, which is almost an impossible thing to do for a young and ambitious driver. So tough times ahead for Bottas.
Now that sounds like a situation you want to get away from for a little bit if you're Valtteri Bottas, and he's doing just that. He talked at the end of the F1 season about just needing to disappear, I think was the word that he used. And when he's back from his disappearance, he's going to do the Arctic Rally in January. We've seen Kimi Raikkonen did that back when he started his rallying experiment. We don't think Bottas is about to go and do 2 years of rallying full time, but this is actually going to be his rallying debut, and he's in a world rally car, which seems a frightening prospect. You know, Raikkonen certainly didn't start in the absolute top class of rally car, but could something like this be one of those important blocks over the winter for Bottas, just to get a mental reset, go and do something completely different, have a bit of fun, hopefully don't crash it, and just maybe it could be the sort of thing that does help him flick a mental switch, perhaps.
Yeah, there's definitely the possibility that he can do this rally just to reset, to rediscover the joy of driving competitively, because although obviously he is living the dream, he's racing for a top Formula 1 team, winning races not last year but the year before certainly, that it does grind you down when things aren't going your way. It's a professional environment, it's a pressure cooker environment, very strenuous for the drivers. So
he looks a broken man at the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And to go and do something, very Finnish, going rallying in the snow, that will help him. I think just remember why it is he goes racing or competing in the first place, and that could be an important point at which he parks all the baggage of 2018 and then moves into 2019 afresh.
I think that enjoyment side of it is important. It gives him something else to focus on and work towards, and hopefully he'll just go out, have a few slides, pull the handbrake a few times, have a bit of a laugh, do well.
What a sweeping generalisation of rallying that is, Ed.
That's how rallying works. That's how rallying works. So I pulled the handbrake with my left hand. I imagine he'd been a left-hand drive, so I probably should have been right hand.
And he's already in the snowbank.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, forgot which side the handbrake was on. But yeah, we see this. Everybody needs this sometimes. I mean, there are people in the world, such as Bottas, who are privileged to be able to enjoy their jobs. We're in a similar position. We're doing something that not everyone gets to do, but there are times when it kind of starts to get on top of you, and you just need to have a moment where you do something that just reminds you, actually, this is really good, and that kind of restokes that enthusiasm and that fire. And that's what we need to see from Bottas, some fire, either the determination to redouble his efforts to try and get on top of Hamilton if he really thinks that's the way to go, or to find that almost even greater determination to say, right, I'm going to be the best number 2 there is, and then by doing that maybe unlock more performance and secure a longer term future.